Welcome back, everybody. Let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, we thank you that we have the privilege of being here together in person at this moment in Earth's history. Please guide, direct, and bless us as we try to engage our mind with your mind so that we might come to a common understanding of the truth for our time. In Jesus' name, Amen. When we spoke about the subject of prayer in our first presentation, I spoke about 5 aspects or perspectives of prayer. Confession, petition, intercession, thanksgiving, and praise. We spoke about various aspects of these elements, and after the meeting someone said that I hadn't been clear enough about my own thoughts on the subject. During the break between the 2 studies offline, several of us were speaking about the subject, and I think people suggested that the answers that I gave offline were more pointed and direct than I gave online. So it's not my objective to tell people what to do, but I think I and each of us have a responsibility, each of us individually and as a corporate body, to try to understand the truth on any subject, especially the subject that touches each of us when it comes to our relationship with God. So, out of these 5 elements of prayer, I think there are some that are more important than others. I certainly think there are some that are safer to engaging than others. Based upon the conversation that we had in the presentation, I want to suggest that petition and intercession this means ask for things, and this means ask about others. We go back to the previous study. We'll see that there. Petition is asking, or people previously had said that we pray to receive things or to ask for things. And then we had intercession, which is asking for others or on behalf of others. It's those two which have the element of asking. For me, based upon my thoughts on the subject for a very long time, and I think confirmed in our conversation online and offline, the element of prayer that is related to asking for things is the most complicated and problematic elements of prayer. And the reason for that is that we ask to receive, and I think it's very difficult to measure if we get an answer or a reception of our request. Most Christians that I've met, when I get into this subject with them, they say, God always answers my request. Whatever I ask, God always gives. And they qualify that by saying, sometimes God says yes, and sometimes God says no. Now, I'm not denying people's individual experiences, but what I am saying is that this aspect of our prayer life is subject to misunderstanding, manipulation, and abuse in a way that the other three areas of our prayer life are not. Because those three elements, confession, thanksgiving, and praise, are not conditional, and there's no set outcome except God accepting whatever we have said in the confession, the thanksgiving, and the praise. Because we're not asking or expecting anything. So I hope that helps people. I can't remember how many presentations it is, but in the recent presentations that I've done, I've spoken about the subject of libertarianism, or as the Declaration of Independence puts it, life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. So I know each of us has a different perspective on the subject, as always. But what I wanted to do is for people to have the opportunity between themselves to open up the subject and discuss it, whilst hopefully doing that with some guidance or some trammel, but also trying to give some guidance on the subject. So it's not the first time I've spoken about it, but I framed it in the following way. I think it was in Germany. I spoke about punishment, and I went on record saying that the movement has no power, authority, or responsibility, power, authority, or responsibility to punish anybody. I didn't frame it this way then, but I'll use the term thought crime. You can't be punished for what you think. Now, I know that's a big subject, but specific to the movement, what I'm saying is that we don't punish people, we shouldn't punish people concerning their belief, what their views on life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, more specifically, the message, prophecy, all those elements, their worldview, people can't be punished for holding them. What we can do and should punish people regarding is what I think I said then, moral crimes, or the way they treat people. And maybe we could encapsulate that with the idea of the golden rule. So, depending upon the crime, you can be punished for not upholding and practicing the golden rule, especially when it comes to the subject of equality. But what people can't be punished for is their views on prophecy. So I don't know if anybody has any questions at this moment. Someone have their hand up?
You say, with regards to prophecy, views about prophecy, you can't be punished.
Tu as dit que par rapport à notre vision sur la prophétie, nous ne pouvons pas être punis.
What about views about equality?
Qu'en est-il sur la vision sur l'égalité?
Or are they two in the same thing?
Ou est-ce que les deux sont la même chose?
Depending upon the specific example, they can overlap or be the same thing as you've said. One of the things that I think people misunderstand when it comes to the right to hold your opinion and your obligation to follow the golden rule is that some people have this idea that a libertarian perspective means free speech. I'm saying libertarianism does not equal free speech. Many people, particularly on the right, believe that it does. I'm going to use the add a word, unfettered. Unfettered, yeah, we're good with that. So my understanding of libertarian philosophy or ideology is that it doesn't allow for unfettered free speech. It has limits. So Curtis asked the question, can a person be punished for having, I'm going to say, wrong views on equality? Because if there were right views, there wouldn't be an issue. Now, of course, that opens up the question about what is right and wrong views on equality. But I don't want to make that point. So, assuming a person has a distorted view of equality, they're of course free to hold that view without retribution. But when they start interacting with others or sharing their view, there are limits to the way they can express themselves. And that's what it says here, that there are limits to what they can say. Does that answer your question? He said yes. So you can hold to whatever view you want to, but if you start expressing that in a way that is deemed to be unacceptable, then you're liable to be punished. So what would be unacceptable speech? I'm saying speech, but it could be action. So what would be unacceptable speech? Anybody, any thoughts? Tamina?
Abuse? No, don't. Abuse?
Abuse? I would agree with that. I'm just going to simply put not following the golden rule. If you have any speech or conduct that doesn't follow the golden rule, then you're liable to be punished. I know that people would argue, they'll say, are you familiar with the term thick-skinned? Yeah? So they'll say, well, I'm thick-skinned, you can say anything to me. Therefore, that means I can say anything to you. Is that the definition of the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And if you can take abuse, you would argue that therefore they can take abuse. It's a very patriarchal explanation or view of the golden rule. And you may have used it or have experienced people using that. So several people have said, no, that's not correct. So it's not as simplistic as saying, do to others as you would have them do to you. You can be rude to me because I can handle it, because I'm a man. And therefore, when I speak to a woman, you should be able to handle it too. There you go, the golden rule in practice, which has just been trampled upon by patriarchy. So does anybody want to give a purer, cleaner definition of the golden rule? No? Okay, I'll have a go. So yes, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So I'll put, that's what that golden rule is there. Then you add a bit. If you were them. So it's not just about what you can handle or what you find acceptable. What the golden rule demands of you is to guess, assume that if you were in their position, what they would want of you, what their expectations are. So you might be strong and you know that they're weak, whatever strength and weak means in your mind or in the example. And you can't treat them in the way that you don't mind them treating you. You have to reverse it. That you have to behave in a way as you would imagine they would expect. And it's not as complicated as it sounds. All you do is imagine a weak, gentle, vulnerable person, however you want to describe that person. And that's how you're supposed to treat people. Curtis? This is a game.
There's a term called the platinum rule.
Get your cards out.
And it says, treat others the way they want to be treated. Treat others the way they want to be treated. So I don't know if it's a step above or just tucked into the golden rule.
Alors, je ne sais pas si c'est une étape de plus que la règle d'or ou si c'est juste
Is that what I said a moment ago? So we have a name for it now. The platinum rule. Because clearly somebody saw the weakness in the golden rule as it's written. Which is different to how it was intended to be understood. So they've coined a new term, the platinum rule. I like that. And I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so once we did that, what you can and cannot be punished about, then in another presentation, I think it was in Australia, I spoke about libertarianism and what that really looks like. So in a libertarian worldview, there are things you can be punished for and things you can't be punished for. Now, it's not my intention to discuss the subject now, but suffice to say, there are certain behaviors that are punishable and certain behaviors that are not. Now, if we go to a familiar subject, Matthew 13, the parable of the wheat and tares. I'm sure each of us are familiar with that subject. What is that story got to do with the subject of free speech, libertarianism, and the subject of what you can and cannot be punished for? So we're looking at what you can and cannot be punished for, the golden rule, unfettered speech, the concept of libertarianism. So all of those various facets of the same subject, which I think for many people is a new topic, especially because I think most people, hopefully not now, but in the past, had a very negative view of libertarianism. So it's something evil or bad. So if we have at least begun to think about libertarianism in a different way, or have breathed a sigh of relief, or have changed our position, what's all that got to do with Matthew 13? Parable of the wheat and tares. So before we have a brief discussion about that, does anybody have any thoughts? Why are we talking about Matthew 13 in the same breath as libertarianism? Anybody on this side? Carolyn? No thoughts? No, that's fine.
C'est moi? In the parable of Matthew 13, we see that wheat and tares grows together.
Et je peux le relier avec l'idée que les deux sont justement libres de d'exprimer leur vision, leur idéologie.
And I can link that with the way that both of them can express their own ideas.
Who's both of them? Who are the them?
C'est qui les eux?
Les deux catégories.
Wheat and tares? Oui. Wheat and tares.
So the two types of plant can express themselves?
Yes.
Anything else?
What do you mean?
Anything more you want to share?
Non.
No?
Non.
Tamina?
Quel micro tu avais déjà?
The tares are not uprooted, and both grow till the harvest together.
Et les deux grandissent ensemble jusqu'à la moisson. Ah. Oui. Sorry, she will translate. Vas-y, Elisa.
The tares are not being uprooted, and both grow till the harvest together.
Anyone else? That was the trick. Continue. Okay, so what are the elements in Matthew 13 that are of significance in your mind? Field? Hope you all agree with that. Two types of plants. Go ahead.
The sower.
The sower.
The servant. Les moissonneurs.
Les moissonneurs.
The harvester.
Okay, we can stop there.
On va s'arrêter là.
Now, I guess we all understand that this parable can be understood in different contexts or different levels. And I've been quite specific in the past that we should not be using this parable in what context?
Judgment.
So if we're not going to use this parable in the context of judgment, did I say something wrong? Does that mean we can't judge? Keep the microphone.
I think it was a question. And also the disagreement.
I've lost there. Who's asking the question?
So the issue was, are we able to judge?
Et en même temps, c'était la racine du désagrément, en fait, le fait de pouvoir juger.
And also it was the roots of disagreement. Are we able to judge a person?
Okay, that's fair. Keep the mic for a minute. So when Jesus gave this story, we'll put Jesus. What's at what level are we doing that?
The world.
So it's at the level of the world. And when Ellen White does it, what level does she do it at?
She does it with the church.
And is it okay to do it at the level of Jesus?
C'est une bonne interprétation de le faire au niveau.
Yeah? And Ellen White? And there was a third one. And who's making that one? Us? And the field is the movement? And I said, don't enter into that one. Is that fair, simple recollection of history? Yep. So despite my counsel in not trying to get this parable and making application of it within our movement, even though I've told people not to do it, they can't help themselves. They seem to like gravitate to this. Like they're going to find some new truth. They're going to expose some significant truth or error. And they really need to do this. So let's do that then. The plants, who do the plants represent? We're in the movement. Tamina said doctrine. And Elder Shemaine said?
Individual.
So I've got doctrine or people. Yeah. Understand between the two of you? Yeah. Anyone else? Tess? It's the same? Anything else? No, we haven't got there yet. That's all we just know. The wheat represents either doctrine or people. Someone said sower. How many sowers were there? One sower. One or two?
One or two.
Two sowers.
Il y en a deux.
Okay. So there's two sowers. About the plants. Any more about the plants? Sorry? Oh, okay. So we're going to go back to the plant. It's not people. So what is it if it's not people?
Because if you said people, if you said people, that means that we identify people as wheat and tares, and this is what we should not do.
Did you say we should not do or we cannot do?
I think we are not able to do it.
Cannot.
Yeah, cannot.
So we don't have any ability to see who the wheat and tare are. Is that what you just said? You're laughing. I mean, do you believe that? Because I'm not laughing.
I said yes.
So are you smiling because it doesn't make any sense what you just said to yourself?
No, I want to go with this answer.
Okay. So what's the difference between the two plants, if not people?
Yes, but what I just said before, if we identify them as a people, you will end up by saying they are wheat or tares. So what's the other solution? We can say it's people, but we should not identify them as wheat and tares. So I don't have a clue.
Does doctrine help?
Doctrine doesn't help for me.
So there are two groups in the movement, and you don't know what they are, or you do know what they are.
I don't know. Go.
Okay. What's going to happen to those plants?
There will be whip. There will be, is it whip?
Reaped?
Harvested.
It says reaped.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be reaped.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask a clever person here according not to Matthew, according to Revelation, of all the things in the world, what gets reaped? There's many, many things in this world. What gets reaped according to Revelation at the end of the world, in the harvest?
Sophie. No. I'm not a clever woman. So wine and wheat.
Wine and wheat are a symbol of something, and this is all going to happen in the Ukraine and in France at the end of the world. And all these angels are going to come to the vineyards and do some work. So you don't believe that. So what's going to get reaped at the end of the world?
Voilà.
People. Oh, okay, that's what we have here. People. So are we okay with people? There are people in the movement, not pets or anything else. It's people. Okay with that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So we'll tie those two together. Who has doctrine? You going to speak loud or someone else? People.
People also
People.
said, yeah.
So I'm going to change this then. To people with doctrine. We okay with that? People have a belief system. Anything else? Can we say anything else about these people? Curtis. Oh no? Okay. I'll do it for you if you don't want to say. These are good and these are bad. Are we okay with that? We can go into the parable and show it. These ones get burnt and these get put into a barn. Okay, we're okay with that? Two types of sowers. One is the owner and one is the enemy. Good and bad. Everybody okay so far? Servants. What are the servants able to do?
Discerner.
Discerner? Discern?
So they're able to see. So what can they see?
Both plants?
So for sure they can see both plants, but more specifically, they can see the difference between the two plants. They can see which plants are good and which plants are bad. Do you agree with that? Yeah? Who are the servants? Who are the servants? Pascal, any thoughts? Who are the servants?
C'est le peuple, c'est
ce sont des hommes, ce sont des...
Ah, pardon. Répète. Non, en français.
C'est aussi les personnes.
Français.
People, you said. Which people?
Compliqué. It's a parable. This parable has its limits.
Of course, yes. But which people?
Quelle personne? Us.
Good. Some of us? All of us?
I will say some.
Okay. So some can see and some can't see. Is that what you just said?
Let's say yes.
In the parable, all the servants can see. So you're saying that some of us are servants and some of us are not servants.
No, it's not what I'm saying.
Then explain. Because all servants can see, and you agree that we are servants, but you said some of us can't see, and some can. The ones that can't see, they can't be servants then.
It will be logical.
Okay, so you agree when someone makes a statement, they may have an idea, then you run through some logical steps, and when you go back to the beginning, you realize those logical steps challenge your original belief system, and then something has to change so that you have a consistent view. So you're saying then that according to your understanding, not all of us are servants.
Yes, this is what I will say.
Okay? Sure.
En français. So if I can explain, if we are all a plant, because we are talking about the movement now, and we are saying all the servants are us,
étaient aussi des serviteurs et donc vous pouvez finalement s'agir que les états de
so that means that all the plants are servants and can be and can observe their own states. Yeah.
So I hope everybody's understanding what Sophie is saying. How do you resolve that?
I don't have any answer from
Okay.
now.
So we've got various ways of looking at this. Just one more question, Sophie. Are we all plants? Or are some of us not plants?
We are all plants.
Okay, so if we're all plants, say 50-50, half are tares, half are wheat. Hold that thought. The servants, are the servants us or some other group of people? Or angels from heaven or something different?
Non, parce qu'on est observateur et acteur dans la parabole. C'est les mêmes personnes. I understand that it is the same people.
Okay, so my only point that I was going to say, that Pascal's already stated, is that the servants, firstly, are people, and they're people involved in the farm, the field, and they work for the boss, the farmer. Which is a long way of saying that they're Christians. And seen as we're talking about the Church of God, they must be people in the movement. So as soon as you can have people who are going to be both plants and servants, then you go back to the question above, who are the servants? It has to be us, but it doesn't answer if it's all of us or some of us. But we've already defined that we have two roles. We're both plants and servants. We're all together? So if it's not everyone that's a servant, then we'd have to have a discussion about who the servants are. And I guess people would say that maybe it's the elders or the leaders or the angels. So they would define it in that kind of way, in some kind of leadership definition. Or it would be everybody. So everything that we've discussed so far, you can find in the verses themselves and Ellen White's commentary. And she does there's a lot of commentary on this subject. If you want to read, I can't say 100% of her material, but a really good, concise collection of all of her statements on the subject. Please go to the PDF booklet that PIP Ministry have produced on the subject. Okay, so why are we discussing this? The servants can see that there are people with good and bad doctrine. The parable says that there are servants or people in the movement who can see the difference between good and bad doctrine. So there is such a thing as good and bad doctrine. And the difference is discernible. But the significance of the prophecy or the parable is that just because you can see a problem, in the parable it says, don't do anything. Let the plants grow together. But in recent presentations, I've rephrased that concept and said what? That you're not allowed to punish people who have differing views on prophecy, which I think took people by surprise when I said that. But it's no different to the study that was done 2016, Germany, 9/11. So we have a dynamic in our midst at the moment where there are differing views of the dispensation that we're in and our relationship to both when and what the Sunday law are. And I'm on public record saying we need to be really careful, not the teachers, but you, us, who are listening to these teachers, and we've already come to our own conclusion about who is right and about who is wrong. And I'm suggesting that that dynamic is exactly what Matthew 13 is dealing with. And now we're beginning to see the reason why I said we should not enter into this subject about making judgments because of the potential damage that it can cause. So we must never get to a place that we either judge the teachers or our fellow members because of what they believe or disbelieve on the subject of the Sunday law. Because up until this point, it's the most serious issue that's affected this movement. And there are certainly people who have different views. We have to understand is what we're seeing really a fulfillment of Matthew 13? Or does Matthew 13 have very similar properties to what we're seeing? I don't know how you view that. Do you think what we see now is a fulfillment of that? And four of the speakers are agents of whom? The enemy, isn't it? There'd be tears, so therefore they're agents of the enemy. Is that what we really believe? Is that what we're seeing being fulfilled before our eyes. Because we're at the right time. The fruit is now being seen at the Sunday law. The latter rain is beginning to be poured out. The fruit will begin to grow and mature. How do people view what, if I call it an initiative, this initiative that I guess I've rolled out that's now confronting the movement? Is this a fulfillment of Matthew 13? What are your thoughts? Who thinks it is? Put your hands up if this is Matthew 13. That you have the ability to discern the wheat from the tares. One person? Two? Three? Oh, more people. So, do you believe that the people with wrong doctrine or bad doctrine, are they bad people or just bad doctrine? Natasha? Natasha wants to say something?
I was thinking loudly.
Est-ce qu'on peut dissocier la personne de son message?
Shall we, are we able to separate the person from the message?
Et dans la situation actuelle,
And in the present situation,
je trouve que c'est plutôt bien que l'on puisse échanger sur le sujet de la loi du dimanche.
I think it's a really good thing that we can discuss about the topic of the Sunday law.
Donc, je ne dirais pas que ceux qui ont un message, si je peux utiliser le terme erroné,
So I will not say that if I can use the term false, I will not say that the people who have a false message,
je ne dirais pas que c'est livré.
so I will not qualify them as a tare. This is my thoughts.
If that's the case, how do you see Matthew 13 being fulfilled in our current history? What's going on in the movement? If you won't make that application, because you think it's a wrong way of looking at things.
Je n'ai pas dit que c'était une mauvaise manière.
I didn't say that it's a wrong way.
Je sais que moi, je pense qu'on ne peut pas dissocier le message de la personne quelque part.
I know that we cannot separate the person from the message,
Mais je ne veux pas faire d'application en disant que le message erroné ou
but I don't want to do an application by saying that the incorrect message.
c'est égal à livré. Voilà.
So I don't want to say that the incorrect message equal the tares.
Parce que je crois que c'est toi qui disais aussi, je ne sais plus qui, on n'est pas encore arrivé à un consensus.
So I think it's you or another person who said that we are not reach a consensus. So that's it. Il a pas fini avec toi, peut-être.
Sophie?
Ah, Sophie. I don't know if it is remarked. And I'm not able to answer to your question right now. On ne peut pas séparer le messager du message. So when we say we cannot separate the messenger from the message, because if I take the example of the movement, there is people who had a messenger who have a good message, mais qui ont une, but they had a bad end. So that's why it refers to the parable as its own limit. So when we see the tares, we say it's tares forever. But for human being, I'm not sure that we can apply that principle. So today we have several messages was been sharing. So I can't say that if the message is incorrect, that the messenger is not good.
Okay. So if we take the people out,
Donc,
then does everything work that way? That the bad or the wrong doctrine is a tear.
yes. So a bad, incorrect doctrine could be a tear.
Okay, but you're not prepared to put it to the level of people.
Mhm.
You want to keep it at the level that Tamina was saying.
Je pense que tu peux faire une erreur sans savoir. C'est un peu du langage courant, on peut faire une erreur en tant que sincère.
Yes, because it's a human being. We can be really sincere and we are doing a mistake.
Okay. Zero? Oh, I'm 0 minutes.
Hein?
Give me 2 minutes. I want to just change subjects, unless,
Hein?
because I said I'd try to do this. Oops. So this is about today's Sabbath school. Today's Sabbath school. So this isn't anything new. We know that in 1798, a significant event happened. And according to the symbology of Revelation 17, you had the fifth kingdom, or in Revelation 13 language, the beast that rises up out of the sea. If we're okay with that. So there's a sea and there's a beast. Everybody okay with that? So when this beast comes to its end, receives a wound that kills it, then another beast rises up. This would be the sixth beast. And in the language of Revelation 13, this is an earth beast. Everybody okay with that? So this beast that comes up out of the sea, when you look at its nature, its characteristics, I'll put 13 there, indicating the chapter. That beast is also a dragon,
Cette bête ici qui sort de la mer, c'est aussi le dragon.
according to 12, chapter 12. The same thing. Hopefully you're all okay with that. And this beast is a lamb, according to Revelation 13. So 1798, the time of the end, marks a transition of kingdoms from the 5th to the 6th. Without defining it, this 5th kingdom here, the beast, is the papacy. And according to our understanding of Daniel 11, verse 40, the papacy is the king of the north. Okay with that? So when the king of the north comes to its end in 1798, and then a new kingdom arises, number 6, what do we do with that? Because if we go back to a separate story, and this is 1798, and I'm not going to give dates, but we go to Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, and then Rome. And it's 2 phases. Babylon is the king of the north. You can proof text that from the Old Testament. When it comes to its end and Medo-Persia takes over, it takes over all the properties of the kingdom before it. So Medo-Persia becomes the king of the north. You okay with that? When Greece does the same, it's very easy to see that happens there. It becomes the king of the north. And there's a complication in this story because Greece, unlike the powers before it, has a characteristic that defines it. Then if we all remember what that characteristic is in Daniel 2, it's the world. It rules the world. And part of that dynamic, it creates an entity that we call the king of the south. So Greece has this duality about it. When it comes to its end, pagan Rome comes, and pagan Rome has to do what? Bring Greece to its end, and it then becomes the king of the north. And in order for all of that to happen, it kills the king of the south. We're okay with that? Then papal Rome comes, and it becomes the king of the north. And there's some complexities about the king of the south in all of that story. So this is number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're okay with that. Then we have the 6th kingdom. So the king of the north is killed. 1798 comes to its end. Just just want to point out that the sixth kingdom didn't do that work. It was another entity. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, did the sixth kingdom, which is the earth beast, which is the lamb, and I'm going to call it the USA, but in quotation marks, because it's not the USA in the way most people understand it. So, does the sixth kingdom become the king of the north? That's the question. And the answer, I'd normally ask, but run out of time, is no. Sixth kingdom is not the king of the north, I think. Might be a tear. Coming back to this line, wheat was the correct word. Wheat. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this line here, but I'm going to redraw it. It's a bit messy. Busy. It's a bit busy. So I drew this line this way. 1798, time of the end. And what this movement did, it's a technical problem for people online. What we did in this movement, in 11 verse 40, we did something very tricky. We turned a singular event into two historical dates. And so we also call that 1989. And the implications of doing that are really significant. So in this story, we go from number 5 to number 6. And remember, I've drawn this as two separate lines, but it's actually a line that looks like this. It's one line that we cut somewhere and bring this underneath. We're okay with that? So this kingdom, whatever we see on this top here, sorry, we can repeat underneath it. Hope that makes sense. So the sixth beast rises up out of the earth and is a lamb. So we should expect the same scenario happening in 1989. We should have a kingdom that comes to its end, and we should have a kingdom that rises up. And what kingdom would this be? Sorry, I always do it. You can't see what I'm even pointing at. What is this one? What number? 6. Good. We can all see that. And what's this one then? 7th. So we can see that the 6th comes to its end in 1989 and the 7th is born. And what we can do here is, this is the earth beast of Revelation 13. But there wasn't, I'll phrase it this way, there wasn't just one earth beast. There were two. And the second one was not a lamb, but a dragon. So we can define, just using this simple pattern, the dragon of Revelation 13. Remember, it's the same kingdom. A lamb that spake as a dragon. That this is the same entity as this one. So I've put the USA here, and I'm going to put the USA here. So you have the USA 1 and the USA 2. So through some trickery, we know that in 1989, there is an alliance between who? Between the papacy and the USA. And we know who's in charge because it's called what kind of an alliance? The Holy Alliance, defining who's in charge. So what we haven't explained well is that even though the papacy died way back here in 1798, somehow it wants to come back into power. And in this nebulous history here, the papacy comes back into, I'm not going to say it comes back into power, but it attempts to come back into power as the King of the North, as identified in the Time of the End magazine. But in 1989, its bid or desire to take over the world, after it's dealt with the King of the South, comes to a halt. And if we use the concept of a relay race or a baton, that the King of the North, or the title of the King of the North, is taken from the papacy to the USA. And that's why in the past, we spoke of verse 40 referring to the papacy. And for a long time now, the movement hasn't been clear in its modeling of verse 41 and verse 42. Because we had plenty of evidence to show that 41 and 42 were not referring to the papacy, but to the United States. And this simple model, I think, can be used to demonstrate that since the time of the end, the United States, in quotation marks, is the seventh kingdom or the King of the North. Depending on your view of the Sunday law, we now come to a time and place where that seventh kingdom is going to begin to take action in a way that it hasn't been able to before. So, in summary, I think that the papacy is not the King of the North, hasn't been for a long time. The United States is the King of the North. It has been for a long time. And it's taken 30 plus years to get to the place where we are now in order for it to do what it either, depending on your story, wants to do or needs to do. And once you get to that stage, you can begin to understand what the work of the seventh kingdom is. Which is a story for another time. Let's pray. Holy God, we thank you that even though we may not fully grasp the implications of Revelation 13, that we all have a sense of the danger in taking that parable and applying it to this movement in a way that becomes offensive and potentially dangerous. Help each of us not to stand on enchanted ground, but to stay safe on the straight and narrow path. We might read the parable, we may play with it, but when we start to make application, you've shown us the danger of doing that. May each of us be careful about how we wield the sword of judgment. As we try to understand the subject of the King of the North, the role of the papacy, the role of the Seventh Kingdom, its relationship with the United States, help us to have a clearer understanding so that we can come together onto this, to a joint or a unified understanding of the subject. Be with us and bless us. And be especially with the teachers who are sharing this message at great personal sacrifice, both in time and reputation. Help them to be true to the understanding that they have, and help them to have courage to explain things as they understand them. In Jesus' name, amen.